A second school of thought defines memes as mental phenomena rather than as behavioral artifacts. At times, Dawkins appears to endorse this view. In this book, The Extended Phenotype, published a few years after The Selfish Gene, Dawkins defines the memes as a unit of information reading in a brain, hypothesized as analogous to a particular gene and as naturally selected by the virtue of its phenotypic consequence in its own survival and replication in a cultural environment. In this view, books and artworks might be viewed as part of human beings' extended mimetic phenotype, but these artifacts themselves are not memes. Some other theories concur. For example, Robert Unger theorizes the memes do not move from brain to brain like infectious agents, but rather that they sometimes cause a human agent to produce signals with assistance of vehicles consistent of sound, speech, music, or artifacts, books, pictures, utensils. These signals, in turn, instigate changes in neuronal configuration of recipients whose brains reconstruct the messages. Unger's theory, therefore, suggests that memes are not ideals for concepts, but rather the ideas and concepts are product of mimetic reactions within the brain. The third approach takes the opposite view, focusing on memes and observable cultural phenomena as not as mental phenomena. William Benson, for example, defines as memes the whole of physical culture, the pots and knives, the looms, cured hides, the utterances and written words, the plugshares and transistors, the songs, painted images, the tents and stone fortifications, the dances and sculpted figures, all of it. Benson and some others prefer this approach because it focuses upon observable behavior rather than upon observable, highly speculative mental and neural states. Their views and also seems consistent with the institution that artifacts do evolve, perhaps in ways that can be eliminated by Darwinian thinking. Even advocates of the mentalist wing of mimetics agree that information embodied in artifacts can evolve, albeit not by means of self-replication. Books do not copy themselves. Thus, Unger proposes that the cultural evolution in fact occurs through three mechanisms: genetic, mimetic, and evolutionary artifacts. Not surprisingly, meme theory has attracted a number of critiques. Perhaps the most common is that memes do not replicate themselves faithfully enough for Darwinian evolution to occur. A common analogy is to the game telephone, in which one person repeats a sentence to another, who then repeats it to another, and so on, such that at the end the result is quite different from the original statement. As noted above, natural selection cannot occur with respect to an entity that copies itself, or it is copied with insufficient fidelity, because potentially adapted traits that occur in one generation will not persist in succeeding generations. A related critique is that meme variation is attributable not only for random mutation but also for human-guided variation, which further determines the relevance of the Darwinian paradigm. These problems lead some theorists who otherwise are inclined to accept evolutionary accounts of human culture to doubt the mimetic replication is the driving force behind that evolution. Some evolutionary psychologists argue that the human brain evolved certain universal responses for recurring environmental constraints, and that these responses form the basis for recurring cultural traits such as the state of the arts, music, and religion. This perspective view culture as evolved rather than transmitted. Another school of thought, sometimes referred to as cultural selectionism, argue that culture does not evolve, though not by means of mimetic replication. Cultural selectionists agree with the evolutionary psychologists that natural selection has resulted in the evolution of human brain that is modular, meaning that it comprises mental modules that process stimuli in accordance with predispositions that were adaptive during the environment of evolutionary adaptation. For example, human beings have evolved the tendency to find patterns in attribute mental states to other agents and so on. These universal psychological traits enable us to draw more or less correct inferences concerning the messages that other human beings are attempting to transmit to us, even though the information itself is subject to derivation, such though the process of transmission cultural information therefore can persist in a sufficiently stable form can evolve if conditions enabling the accumulations of adaptive innovations are present. For the cultural selectionists, however, the memetic's view that information self-replicates in accordance with its own interests is neither descriptively accurate for a prerequisite of cultural evolution.